Hey everyone, welcome to 59 Topps Friday, presented by Wax Pack Wisdom, where we talk baseball history through the cards we love. My name is Jake T. O'Donnell. We built the iconic 1959 Topps baseball set, and in this series, we're going through every card to talk about the players, teams, and people who made up Major League Baseball in 1959. Today, we'll cover cards 350 through 354 in the set. Card number 350 belongs to Ernie Banks of the Chicago Cubs. 1959 was his 7th season in the major leagues. Over 7 decades after he broke the color barrier for one of the sport's oldest franchises, the name Ernie Banks immediately brings to mind his signature phrase, "It's a beautiful day for baseball, let's play two." This is a grand testament to his legacy, that beyond his myriad historic accomplishments as one of the best players ever, what is most remembered today is how much Banks loved baseball, a love that spread to millions of fans for the game he helped grow. Ernie Banks was born in Dallas in 1925, and his father had played on a traveling baseball team before Ernie was born. Ernie Banks had played softball in his youth, as his high school didn't have a baseball team. Nonetheless, his talent was noticed, and he played several years in the Negro Leagues, including time with the Kansas City Monarchs. Banks spent a year in the Army in 1952, returned to the Monarchs, and was acquired by the Cubs in 1953. In September, Banks became the first black player in Cubs history and immediately took over as starting shortstop. In 1954, Banks hit .275 with 19 homers and finished second in NL Rookie of the Year voting. Banks' power exploded in 1955 when he smashed 44 home runs and set the league record for most grand slams in a season with 5. He made the first of 14 All-Star appearances in that year as well. Strong seasons followed in 1956 and 1957, but his best was 1958. He led the majors with 47 homers and 129 RBI and won the National League Most Valuable Player Award. In 1959, he led the majors in RBI again and hit 45 homers, earning back-to-back NL MVP awards. This would be the first time a player would win an MVP on a last-place team. Banks led the NL in homers in 1960 and won his only career Gold Glove award for his prowess at shortstop. In 1961, Banks moved to first base, and he wound up playing close to the same number of games in his career there as shortstop. He slumped in 1963 but returned to prominence with All-Star appearances in 1965, 1967, and 1969, and hit 32 homers in 1968. Despite the arrivals of future Hall of Famers Ron Santo and Billy Williams to the Cubs in the early 1960s, Banks never played for a team that made the postseason in his entire career. In 1969, the Cubs seemed likely to play in October, but they faltered down the stretch and lost the NL East Division title to the Mets. Banks retired after the 1971 season with 512 career home runs, 2,583 hits, and a .274 average. He was elected to the Hall of Fame on the first ballot in 1977. After his playing career, Banks was a first base coach for the Cubs for 2 seasons and remained in the organization on a personal services contract in addition to other business ventures. Mr. Cub was an ambassador for both the sport and the franchise, where he spent his entire career. Banks was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2013, and he passed away 2 years later. Card number 351 belongs to Earl Torgeson of the Chicago White Sox. 1959 was his 13th MLB season. Torguson was a 15-year big league veteran first baseman from Washington State who played for the Braves, Phillies, Tigers, White Sox, and Yankees. He was known as a fiery competitor who was known for getting into brawls both on and off the field. In his second big league season, he appeared for the pennant-winning Braves in the 1948 World Series, but his team lost to the Indians despite his .389 batting average in the series. A naturally patient hitter, Torgeson's best year was 1950, when he led the National League in runs scored with 120, drew 119 walks, hit 23 homers, and batted .290 with a .412 on-base percentage. He appeared in his second World Series for the White Sox in 1959 with just 2 at-bats, and his team lost again. After his playing career, Torgeson worked as a stockbroker, owned a sports camp, was a director of parks and a county commissioner in Washington, and managed and coached professionally. Once again, our subscriber Larry R. has supplied us with a picture from 1959 that includes White Sox from that pennant-winning year. Here, Torgeson is pictured alongside teammate Bob Shaw with Larry, his father, and brother. Thanks again to Larry for the picture. Card number 352 belongs to Robin Roberts of the Philadelphia Phillies. 1959 was Roberts' 12th year in the big leagues. Roberts was a hard-throwing right-handed pitcher who would spread his 19 years in the big leagues between the Phillies, Orioles, Astros, and Cubs. The majority would be with the Phillies. Roberts served in the United States Air Force during World War II and was talented in both basketball and baseball, playing both at Michigan State. He would sign with the Phillies thereafter and make his major league debut in 1948. He, along with other youthful players, would lead the Phillies to their first National League pennant in 35 years in 1950, earning the nickname the Whiz Kids. Roberts would start one game in the World Series, which the Phillies would lose 2-1 to the Yankees, and the Phillies lost the series as well. In 1952, Roberts was named the Sporting News MLB Player of the Year after achieving 28 wins in the season, which was the most wins in the National League since Dizzy Dean won 28 games in 1935. He fell short of the MVP award in the National League when his name was reportedly left off the ballot by a Philadelphia writer who did not like him. From 1950 to 1955, Roberts would win at least 20 games a season for the Phillies, leading the National League in victories from 1952 to 1955. He never walked more than 77 batters in any regular season. At one point, Roberts pitched 28 complete games in a row, with one of those games lasting 17 innings. One of the most memorable games of Roberts' career came on May 13, 1954, when he gave up a leadoff home run to Bobby Adams of the Reds, but then went on to retire 27 consecutive batters in a row to win the game 8-1. After the 1961 season, Roberts would be sold to the Yankees. In 1962, while playing for the Orioles, the Phillies announced that Roberts' number 36 would be retired, the first number to be retired by the organization. During the off-seasons, Roberts reportedly toured with a basketball team, playing against other touring squads, such as the Harlem Globetrotters. Roberts would end his major league career with a 286 and 245 win-loss record, a 3.41 ERA, and 2,357 strikeouts. Roberts was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1976. He was also added to the Phillies Wall of Fame. Following his playing career, Roberts coached at the University of Southern Florida, where he would earn 6 conference titles in 9 seasons. He died in 2010 at the age of 83. Card number 353 belongs to Curt Flood of the St. Louis Cardinals. This was his 4th year in the majors. Flood was a superb outfielder for parts of 15 big league seasons, mostly with the Redbirds. He was among the finest defensive center fielders of his era, and he certainly held his own with the bat, hitting over 306 different times. But Curt Flood's legacy remains his off-field battle with the establishment of professional baseball and team owners. And despite his loss in court, Flood's actions paved the way for free agency in baseball and changed sports forever. Flood was signed by the Reds out of high school in Oakland, and he briefly appeared for the Reds in 1956 and 1957 as a teenager. Ahead of 1958, Flood was traded to the Cardinals, and he was a critical cog for the 1964 and 1967 World Series champs. Flood led the National League in hits in 1964. He won 7 straight Gold Glove awards and made 3 All-Star teams. Flood was informed after the 1969 season that he was being traded to the Phillies. He did not want to play for a Philadelphia franchise that at the time was noted for poor ownership and an environment not welcoming to black players. He did not want to retire either, but was bound by baseball's decades-old reserve clause that kept players under team control in perpetuity. Flood considered challenging the reserve clause in court, and Players Association Chief Marvin Miller told Flood he was unlikely to succeed. Nonetheless, Flood penned a letter to Commissioner Bowie Kuhn that read in part, quote, "I do not feel that I am a piece of property to be bought or sold irrespective of my wishes. I believe I have the right to consider offers from other clubs before making any decisions," close quote. Flood's request was rejected, and the legal battle over the veracity of the reserve clause made it to the Supreme Court. While the lawsuit progressed, Flood played the final 13 games of his career with the Washington Senators in 1971. In 1972, the Supreme Court heard the case and ruled 5-3 in baseball's favor. Despite losing the case, Flood's actions raised public awareness about how the playing field of contract negotiations was tilted in favor of the owners. Additionally, as a result of Flood's lawsuit, owners capitulated to the players and began to allow grievances to come before independent arbitration. This concession led to a challenge that killed the reserve clause in 1975 and brought on the start of free agency. After the lawsuit, Flood struggled in his personal life and sought treatment for alcohol abuse. He died of throat cancer in 1997. For his role in altering the course of sports history, Flood deserves consideration for induction into the Baseball Hall of Fame as a pioneer. So far, He has not been elected. Card number 354 belongs to Pete Burnside of the Detroit Tigers. 1959 was Burnside's 4th year in the big leagues. Burnside was a left-handed pitcher who would spread his time in the majors between the Giants, Tigers, Senators, and Orioles. Burnside signed with the Giants out of high school with the agreement that he would finish his degree at Dartmouth College while pitching for the Giants in their minor league system. Following some time in the Army, Burnside made his major league debut in 1955. Injuries prevented him from returning to the big leagues until 1957. He won only one of the 16 games he would play for the Giants in 1957 and 1958. He spent all of 1959 in the bullpen after being acquired by the Tigers. The Senators selected him in the expansion draft in 1960. Burnside would spend 2 seasons with the Senators before being traded to the Orioles, and was then reacquired by the Senators in 1963, where he would end his career in the United States. He would go on to play 2 seasons with the Hanshin Tigers in Japan. In Major League Baseball, he had a record of 19-36 with a 4.81 ERA and 303 strikeouts. Following his baseball career, Burnside earned his master's degree from Northwestern University and then returned to his high school, where he taught and coached from 1967 through 1993 when he retired. He remained lifelong friends with his teammate Don Zimmer. Burnside died in 2022 at the age of 92. That is going to do it for this half of this edition of 59 Tops Friday on Wax Pack Wisdom. Today's episode was written by Abby O'Donnell and Jake T. O'Donnell. Do you have a story about one of the people, players, or teams we discussed today? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our Wax Pack Wisdom content. In the video description, you will find our source material for this episode, links to where you can follow us on all social media channels, as well as a list of our favorite nonprofits and charities. Please consider a donation to one of them if you enjoyed this content. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Wax Pack Wisdom. Take care.